All right, here we are live, episode 38, the Lucas Grandsire podcast. Super creative show, super creative guy, all that good stuff. Today's guest is a man with a long flowing mane. It is, of course, Drake Riggs, MMA journalist at, every website that offers MMA. What's going on, man? How are you?
Man, can't complain. I'm very happy to be back home after a long stretch on the road. Just got back from New York last night, about 11 o'clock Pacific time. Would be 2 a.m. Eastern time. My body clock's all over the place right now. But I'm just happy to be home. Happy to be here with you, Lucas. Let's talk some shit, man.
What's that flight like? Because where are you? You're in Washington, right? Some people think you're in Canada or something, but you're in
Yes.
Washington. You're going literally across the country. How's that trip?
That first of all, that myth or whatever you want to call it, it's completely started by Ant Walker. I am not Canadian. I mean, I wouldn't mind to be Canadian. I love the Canadians, and Vancouver, BC, wonderful place, much better than Vancouver, Washington, here where I am pretty much in. But yeah, the flights, going cross country is always a journey. I feel like to Florida, which I've been to a couple times very recently, it feels a lot worse than this New York one. And having the connecting flights, that always stresses me out. I'm not a fan of that. If I can get the one shot, I'm good to go. And I had that last night, which I was very happy with, and had the whole row to myself. So I was lounging, having a ball. But yeah, it's, if you have to connect like somewhere, usually it's Denver for me, and nothing ever good happens in Denver. I don't know why. What is wrong with me in Colorado? I don't know, but that's never a good time. So generally cross country is not very fun unless well, it's not fun even if you have one way, but it's a lot easier. I prefer that much better. So it was about 5 hours 45 minutes last night, but hey, it is what it is, right?
So, I haven't been able to get out and cover an event in person. When do you guys leave? Like, are you leaving? I heard some people leave Saturday night, some people leave Sunday morning. What's kind of your plan for that?
So yeah, I've obviously done that before, where you leave either very early Sunday morning, which is pretty much Saturday night, where you don't sleep at all. Done that plenty and did that a lot when I started out, but after so long and kind of going through that, and it takes a toll. So it's like, do I have to do this? Maybe I'll just stay an extra day so I don't have to, deducting, what do you want to say? Relieving stress is a big thing for me, Lucas. So if I can minimize that as much as possible, I'm going to do it. And especially after doing this for so long now. So what I do is I'll stay Sunday and then leave Monday. So I'll go Tuesday. So right before media day, which is on Wednesdays, and then stay till the following Monday. So practically an entire week, just missing the one day. But yeah, in some cases I'll still do the pretty much the night after, but I very much prefer not to do that one, because it's like, all right, now I got to go back to my place after the event, get my stuff, all the luggage, go there. And sometimes I've been in cases, man, where I've brought my suitcase to the event, and then I'm like, all right, I'm going to the airport right after, as you can tell. And I know a lot of people have done that as well, so it's not like a new thing, but that's just like, I don't want to have to worry about all that, so I'll stay the extra day, enjoy wherever I am, even though I generally just like stay in my hotel room or whatever and do extra work. So it completely defeats the purpose, but hey, it's less stressful that way. And that's what I'm all about.
So let me ask you this: someone who hasn't been able to make it out to these events, first time you did a UFC event, how was that experience? Because I feel like looking at it from the outside, it'd be kind of like high school, right? You're trying to figure out who are your people, who are your friends. Are you going to be the awkward guy by yourself? Like, what was that first experience like for you?
So thankfully, the first UFC event experience that I had covering, I wouldn't say it was really like that, because I had done plenty of Bellators. I think I did like 5 before then, which that's enough to kind of get the feet wet. And then just, the work I did in the space online and all that was enough to where I'd met a lot of people, met them. I always feel weird saying I've met somebody without having met them in person, right? But you talk and all that kind of thing. But no, first UFC event I covered was UFC 244, so a very big one. So there were a lot of people there, and it was definitely intimidating and stressful, because the outlet I was there for didn't quite know exactly what they wanted from me, and I think I hate that worse than telling exactly what to do. But now at this stage, I've got down pretty good, and SCMP is wonderful as well. But yeah, in terms of like meeting other people and feeling awkward, I didn't really get that with that UFC show, because I had done it enough times, I think, with Bellator. But I'll tell you, the very first Bellator one, it felt exactly like that. The very first event I ever covered was just like, oh man, this this is very intimidating, whether it's, and that was back in the day too, when It was like scrum style, where you just get in the room, all the fighters are lined up next to like their posters and everything, and just a free for all madness. So that is like, in my opinion, starting out that way again. I envy anybody who's starting out now, because for UFC, for example, they have like your seat assigned. Everything's very organized because of COVID. So that's a nice thing about it. But also it limits the exclusivity of like the interviews you do, which that hurts as well, especially for, people like us, I imagine, for me at least. So there's multiple ways to look at it, but I totally get where you're coming from in terms of when I first did it. It was kind of like deer in the headlights and being like, oh shit, there's Rampage Jackson, there's Gegard Mousasi, Rory McDonald, like all these big names. Cause I wanted to go to a big one for my first show, right? So Bellator 206, what the first champ versus champ fight they ever did, Mousasi and McDonald. So it was like, all right, let's do this one. And I only ended up interviewing and talking to, I think it was Mousasi, which was intimidating, like I said. And then Dakota Zimmerman, who no one will remember who that is, but she fought Carrie Melendez, I believe. I remember.
So that's why.
Yeah,
That's because you know what that matchup was for. So there you go. That's why.
The funny thing about that is I was like the only person who, not the only person who talked to her, but the only person who published their interview. And so she shared it and it blew up. It was bigger than my Mousasi one, man. So it's like, do not, take advantage of those moments. So that's a little bit of advice to flip all this and tie it in. But yeah, it's definitely an experience, man. It's a little jarring at first, but practice makes perfect. Reps, as James Lynch always says, shout out to him. The more you get, the better and more comfortable it gets. So yeah.
I'm sure at some point I'll make it out to one. Geographically, I haven't had any luck. 'Cause at one point I was in France and everyone's like, you got to do the regional scene. I was like, what regional scene? There is no scene. There's nothing.
It's illegal, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's illegal. And then now that it is legal, it's like nothing's happening. So still, and now I'm in North Carolina where it's like the one state where nobody does anything. So still, it's like, how do you want me to make it out there? But I know for my first one, I'm going to take a different approach for me. I'm going to do the regional, super regional thing that's happening on like an island based off a state no one's ever heard of, because
that'd be fun.
Every time I do something for the first time, it's catastrophically bad. Like my first interview was a train wreck, anything I do. So if you go to an event that has Conor McGregor, for example, and you're like, this is the first time we're going to do it big, something's going to happen to me where that's going to be what I'm going to remember for forever. Pink suit guy, blue suit guy, whatever it turns into, it's going to be a disaster. So, you got to think strategic, at least on my end for this one.
Yeah, definitely, man. That's the thing, right? Like when I did that first Bellator show, what year was that? I think it was 2018. I'm pretty sure that was 2018, maybe September-ish. So I had only been writing for maybe a year and a half or so. So I mean, if I could have waited a little bit longer and kind of prepared better, because I don't remember writing down any questions or anything. I went in very unprepared, Lucas. That's the point I'm getting at. So if you can just really, but it's hard to give advice about that, because having never experienced it firsthand, it's very hard to imagine what it'll be like. People can tell you, like I'm saying right now, what it's like, but it's still hard to fully grasp and imagine that, because there's no like footage of what media days look like, right? There's no one who goes around like vlogging or whatever, an entire media day and showing you like, all right, this is generally how it goes, coordinating all that. And it's because we're all doing our own thing. So who's going to do that? Or like the promotion's not going to do that. So it's one of those things where you just have to kind of say, fuck it and see how it goes, which is, like I said, very stressful, but that's just kind of how this sport is built, man. I'm sure it's like that with plenty of other sports too, where you just kind of have to jump in and see how it goes. Trial and error. I mean, that's big in everything, right? But it's just prepare the best you can and think about every possibility, I guess, is what I would say. But it's something I don't think you can 100% be ready for until you actually do it.
I mean, I think the closest we've come to that sort of blog or vlog, I guess, in this case would be James Lynch. I think there was one where he kind of showed you what a day looks like. I remember he had the protein bars and the stuff like that. So, you pick the bits and pieces, but I feel like once you get thrown out there, it's like, oh, okay, this is different. Like, I mean, it's intimidating, but I assume it's just like doing interviews too. You do a couple of them, and before you know it, you know how it works, and it is really not that deep.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing too, is I'm pretty sure that first Bellator event was the first time that I had actually interviewed somebody one-on-one in person. So like, I think that would be a good way to prepare, actually, is if you do something like, let's say the Schmo, where a lot of yours are one-on-one, but not at media days, right? Like he goes to the people, whether it's at gyms or sets them up wherever. if you can maybe do that a little bit more before going to an event, I think you'll be a lot better, a lot more comfortable, because that's kind of was the big thing for me, is like, oh shit, I'm right in front of the fighters now. It makes you think like, I really can't fuck up. If I say something wrong, they're going to be right here, and it's going to be 10 times more awkward than if it's like what we're doing right now. So I think that's a very good way to prepare. And just like really pay attention, I guess, to the schedule and plan things out about how you're going to go about it. But yeah, just being ready for the atmosphere kind of in one-on-one in-person interviews. That's a big thing, I would say, actually, now that I think about it.
You mentioned the schmo. I don't know if I would be able to sit there in front of because he's done it in front of some intimidating fighters, screaming into the microphone with every vein coming out of his face and neck,
Dude.
while the fighter's looking at him, while like Game Bread wasn't entertained at all. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I would have. I mean, people have seen it in my content. I'm not necessarily that high energy, so it would be it'd be tough. But still, like that. I mean, you gotta if you're gonna go into that, you gotta be 100%. Like you cannot break character at all.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because it was funny. I remember at this last Bellator show, what was it, 268, whichever one was Nemkov and Glikas, like 3 weeks ago, whenever that was. I was there for that, and he actually came to the media day, and he was going to miss. Oh no, it was open workouts. He was going to miss media day, so he talked to some of the fighters there instead. And so I watched him talk to Nemkov, and who was being translated by Moldavsky, right? These are two very serious Russian men, and Moldavsky's English is not 100% great. So seeing like that contrast in personalities was just like, oh man, let's see how this goes. And I think he did get Nemkov to actually crack a smile, but it was like, man, it's like kind of tense to watch this clash, of two different volumes, right? So yeah, props to him for always sticking to that and never breaking character himself. I don't know if I've ever seen him crack. So good job by Dave there.
How do you feel about the schmo? I feel like the media, you have like the older people with the monocles that aren't happy about it. Some of the younger people are ready to embrace it. How do you feel about that sort of, I guess, character sort of thing he puts on?
I mean, it's working, right? So I can't knock it too much. But the thing I always think about, to be fully candid and honest about a character or persona in this kind of space like he's doing, is the longevity. Like, how long will that be able to last for? And I noticed, like, on his podcast that he has now, the Schmo Zone, I noticed when I look at the comments, like, a lot of people, this is not me saying anything, it's what I've been reading, but like, seems like they're starting to like actual Dave being himself, at least in that format, a lot more than the Schmo. And of course, I'm not reading every single comment or anything, so maybe he could say differently, which I'm sure he probably would. But I just always think about the shelf life on that kind of thing, because it's like, it's not comedy or stand up or anything like that, but things die down a little bit and people lose interest if it's the same thing over and over. You have to reinvent yourself, when needed. So a good example, I know you and Shaq were talking about wrestling a couple weeks ago, but Chris Jericho is a great example. A guy who, whenever his character would get stale, he would always change it up and has found ways to stay relevant for like 25, 30 years. So I don't know if we've necessarily seen that yet from Dave, aside from doing the podcast thing as well. But like, for the Schmo character itself, I just think about, like, if I was to do something like that, I would feel I would need to have something planned ahead for when to change it up. You know what I mean? And maybe he does, right? But again, it's working. I don't know. It's an interesting topic, though.
I know when it first started, there was kind of like why is he doing this thing? Who is this guy? And then I listened to
That's how I felt.
Yeah, you're like, who the fuck is, this dude in the suit screaming at fighters with the yellow glasses? And then he did his podcast as Dave, because he kind of breaks it down. He's like, I'm not the schmo, I'm Dave.
Yes.
It's like, oh boy. And he was kind of explaining, like, he's been doing this for so long. And he's like, you guys heard about me now that I'm the schmo. So I'm like, all right, I'm not mad at you in that case, because you tried the conventional route. It didn't work. And MMA, I mean, that's the place. If you're going to be weird, if you're going to character it up, I mean, this is the place to do it. You look at Henry Cejudo, Colby Covington is on this wall somewhere behind me. Like, these people figured it out. And like it or not, I believe it's working. But you're right about the shelf life thing. Because at what point, because at first I remember watching it, he'd be like interviewing John Jones. I'm like, all right, I want to see how John Jones is going to react to the screaming guy. And now, to be honest, I don't really care anymore how they're going to react. It's like, we know him and we get a general idea of. So, I mean, you're right about that shelf life. And I'm glad I'm not him, because that's up to him to figure out. But yeah, I'm not sure where you go with that. I mean, he's doing the podcast Henry Cejudo, so that's obviously going somewhere, right? But
Mhm.
it is going to be at a point where it's like, okay, we get it, we've seen it. What do you do next?
Did you think there's any possibility of, or maybe not possibility, but how well it would work for him to introduce a different character?
Oh man, like
Like
switch
that's
up,
that's
switch
a
up the
bold
colors.
move,
Yeah.
right?
Just switch up the colors of everything. Red sunglasses instead of yellow. I wouldn't say pink suit because there's already a guy who tried that. I mean, maybe an orange suit or something like, just completely, mess up your name. This is the something else. I mean, maybe, and then just pretend he has no idea who the schmo is or who Dave is. People were like, "Oh,
Right.
what are you doing, Dave?" He's like, "Stop calling me," or like Mayhem Miller with Ariel, like, "Stop calling me Mayhem, stop calling me Dave." Like, maybe it's a bold move, but I like where your head's at. I feel like that could work.
Yeah, I mean, with especially again, like you said, with how wacky MMA is, I think they'd embrace a split personality media guy. That would be something unique. I mean, the schmo is already a very unique thing, but I mean, yeah, it's just I just can't help but think about how long that kind of lasts. And it's not to say that that's not the same for like you and I or whatever. And I think we still need to make changes at all times. There's always ways to get better and everything like that. But it feels like when you're just being yourself, well, what exactly am I gonna do aside from make these much smaller improvements than
Yeah.
this drastic physical appearance, which you did mention my hair, and I have been growing it for quite a while now, not for the sake of standing out more, but it definitely helps.
I feel you this is the blonde Drake Riggs. I mean, it's a completely different beast. Or even the facial hair. We see you looking more and more majestic as time goes on. Like, and guys are starting to shout it out. I forget which video I saw, but there was one guy who mentioned it. Like,
It's
you're
Uriah
starting to,
Hall.
yeah, you're starting to get some props from people, man. Like, that's how you know you're onto something.
Yeah, I know that was a very funny moment because there was just it was just out of the blue. Like I asked a question, he's like, "Hold on, man, look at this guy." I was like, "All right,
It's
yeah, I
like,
mean,
oh no.
I'm here." Oh, great, here we going. Because Uriah Hall notoriously not a big fan of media, so I was
Yes.
getting ready for roasting there, but I guess I'm his favorite media person now, so I'll take that if I can.
Oh man, you're right. I mean, you're right. How many interviews have we seen where he's just so dry, or he doesn't? I remember watching one with MMA Junkie a long time ago where they were like, "What do you think about the fight?" I just want to work with kids, and you're like, "Come on, you're right. Give me something." And he's just like, "I work with kids." And it's like, okay, we're just gonna give up. Like, I mean, but and maybe it works too because maybe people are like, "What kind of wacky thing is Uriah Hall going to do to the media?" Because we know he doesn't like them. Like, maybe is he a drawl or not? In the words of Brendan Schaub, I don't
Ye
know.
Yeah, I mean, with guys who kind of do that kind of thing, I'm just here so I don't get fined kind
Yeah,
of vibe, right? It makes me interested in terms of like, all right, let's see if the interviewer, whoever
yeah.
talking to, can get something out of him, or if it's the same old thing, which I feel like he's gotten better over time. But there was a period, man, where he was just not having it with anybody. So I don't know what the deal was there. Maybe he just didn't like how some headlines came out. I'm actually, if I remember correctly, that's kind of what happened. I don't remember specifically the case, but happens with a lot of fighters, as you know. But yeah, that's always something where, and I think you and Shaq were talking about this because I did watch that full episode. But it's, and I guess this kind of goes in line with the schmo thinking a little bit, but it's on us, I think, to majorly on us to get a good conversation out of whoever we're talking to, right? Like they don't have to give us anything. They don't have to even talk to us. So it's like
Yeah.
on you to be interesting, give them questions that are, fun for them to talk to, not the same run of the mill. And I know there's some things, you kind of touch on if they have a fight coming up, like, all right, don't give away your strategy exactly, but tell me what you're thinking about this kind of thing. Um, so yeah, that's always what I find most interesting about watching other people. So yeah, with Uriah though, specifically, a unique guy just overall.
That's why it's interesting watching certain interviews because certain interviewers are like, how are they going to navigate it? Like, I'm trying to think who was the fighter that was really bad at interviews. She lost to Angela Hill. She was from North Carolina. Forget what her
Hannah
name is.
Cyphers.
Yes, where she was notoriously bad, and like James Lynch, for example, was like challenge accepted. Like I
He
admire
loves it.
people. I admire people that go into that and they're like, this is going to be a 3-minute interview with 50 questions, but I'm going to do it, and we're going to see the most interesting thing he got out of it was she had a farm. So credit to him. He's trying, damn it. But there's some fighters they will not crack.
Yeah, no, I've never spoke to Hannah. I think she's just like painfully shy. I think we've
Yeah.
figured this out by now, and just how she's, grown up. That was kind of just her lifestyle. But yeah, he really enjoys that challenge. That's not quite the challenge I prefer to have.
No.
That one kind of, I'll avoid that if I can. Nothing against her, but it's like you know exactly what you're getting into in that case. Whereas I think a challenge that I much more prefer, and it's funny, this came right to mind, was when I spoke to Sean Strickland for the first time, Lucas. This was right when he came back after his motorcycle injury, right? Like he almost lost his leg or whatever the crazy thing was. I got set up with him, and I had no idea that he was who, like the personality that
Psycho.
he was.
Psycho.
Yeah, a legitimate psychopath. So I had to kind of adjust on the fly to, oh man, I got to match this crazy a little bit, because he's, you know, if there was something negative to a filter, less than a filter, he obviously has that, doesn't really care. So that's kind of a challenge I'm more open to, where at least you can go back and forth a bit more than carrying like 80% of the conversation with either a Hannah Cyphers or a Henry Corrales, whoever.
Oh, yeah, you know what? That's a good one. I think did I talk about that with Shaq or something like
Yes,
that?
you
We were
did.
talking about
But
Henry
I've
Corrales.
spoken to him
Oh,
as well, and
he's so
yeah.
dry. Like even his nickname matches his interview style. Like his nickname is okay. Like yes, that is the half of his answers are okay. Like there's some guys I just wasn't prepared for, like a Tanner Bozer, and then you get surprised, and the second time around you're like, hell no. Second time around, we're gonna do this differently. I am not gonna get got a second time.
Yeah, I know. He's a weird one because he has like a personality, I think. Like
Yes.
he's a cool guy and very interesting. Like I remember when he told that story about him getting stabbed, like it's in there. He's got that energy in him, but I don't think he just cares generally to bring it out.
Yeah.
Depending on, you really gotta pick and prod because yeah, no, that I remember speaking to him and I was like, oh, this is a nightmare. Like realizing that
Yes.
midway through, it's like this is not working very well. It's very quick.
There's some fighters that are really tricky. Like Lauren Murphy can be tricky depending on who you are. Like they're, because especially she had her thing with MMA fighting. Like first time I talked to her in a very long time, like it was, she started crying on the show and stuff. So I'm sitting there like, okay, how am I going to navigate this thing? And somehow it went well. But there's some fighters like going in, if you just talk about the boring fight stuff, it's not going to work. So how are you going to
Yeah.
switch it up? How are you going to try? And a good example is your interview with Jessica Rose Clark, and that's why I commented on there. Like I thought it was so good. It wasn't just what's your game plan? How do you feel? Like you guys pretty much had a conversation and you happened to talk about the upcoming fight, and people used your quotes too. So I thought the whole thing
Yes.
was a good example on, how to do things the right way with fighters.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that greatly. And I mean, the thing with Jessie is like she makes it so easy. And for her and I know you're not supposed to have friends in this business or whatever with the fighters or whatever, but we're essentially, friends. At least I would say that. I don't know if she would. She'd probably talk some shit to me right now if she was to come on. But yeah, that's always my goal in this game. Is I hate, maybe not hate, but I really am against trying to make an interview feel like an interview. I just want them to feel like we're chatting, like we're doing right now. So with Jessie, like that was the perfect example, I think, of how I want every single discussion or chat with a fighter to feel. Obviously, you can't always have that, but you can do your best to make it feel that way. So with her, she makes it super easy. And of course, we've known each other for a pretty decent while now. So that's just going to happen with her. If I'm going to toot my own horn a little bit, but that's always the goal, man. Is I hate the mundane kind of just basic question layout. Like if there's a way to expand on something they said, I'm going to take it there if I have enough time, right? You got to worry about that always too. But I'm just trying to talk, man. Just trying to chat it up.
I do have to say though, I didn't appreciate her slandering Red Dead Redemption. Like I felt like that was uncalled for,
Of course.
unnecessary. I mean, why would you let her say? I would have cut her off right there, and I would have been
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
"Look, thank you for the time. There won't be a next time, but that's enough. That's enough."
Yeah.
Arthur is a good man, all right.
Yes.
And the way he went out, I mean, he does not deserve to hear this right now. So no, but yeah, I didn't
Right.
appreciate. That was the one thing where I almost got distracted. I was like, "What? What are you talking about? No, no, this is right. The original was the childhood video game. Now I played this one as an adult. No, don't do this to me."
I know we've talked about that before, and she just has a short attention span. Let's put it that way, Jesse. If you do see this, yeah, Red Dead. I mean, that might be the greatest game I've ever played, man. It's just so incredible. But yeah, not for everybody, I guess.
Not
Too
for one
realistic.
person. Not for
Yeah,
one
yeah,
person. There you go. Now, I remember when I started it, at first I was like, I would never betray John. I was like, John is my guy. We did everything the first time around. We did not go down like a punk. And then you start to get to know Arthur and you're like, yeah, fuck all that John stuff. Like
right, right.
we like Arthur now. We're an Arthur guy. I appreciate the way he talks to his horse and stuff like that. Like we're an Arthur guy.
Oh no, totally, man. Arthur was a fantastic character, and just kind of seeing that early side of John Marston, like didn't really love him, and I honestly didn't really like him too much in the first game either. But yeah, I thought Arthur was great, and it's like, damn, that's a brutal way for him to go. And you see that, like, what he got, I forget whatever the sickness was, but he got it from going to collect something.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that was great how they weaved that in, man. Oh, it's so good. It's such a good game.
If you've been on the Reddit, like there are people that have tried to find ways not to get him sick. They're like, I do everything except that. I ignore it. You can't do that. That's part of the
Yeah.
game. I appreciate where your head's at. But some people are like, no, I've tried shooting him, or because I guess the guy's coughing or something. So they're like,
Yeah.
no, I've tried to lasso him from a distance. Like, uh, like people think too much about this stuff. Like, and it's not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's so likable, right? So I understand where the thought process might be there, but at the same time, it's a prequel, so the story already has one direction. Everybody, sorry.
So how do you play the game? Are you one of those guys like you say hello to everybody and collect your honor, or are you shooting the homeless guy that's asking you for some change?
I think it depends on the homeless guy. I mean, I'm not like taking them all out, but depends on how I'm gonna treat everybody how I want to be treated, kind of guy. So if they're being dicks, I'll give it to them back. But I generally try to play, pretty realistic and make it not too difficult, because if you do that a lot, Lucas, you're gonna get the bounty built up, and it's just you can't go anywhere. It's like you're constantly on the run, and then you have to find ways to like lower it or get rid of them before you can even do a mission, because then they'll follow you there like,
Yeah.
hey, Rockstar is thinking ahead, man.
I got banned from playing that game in front of my family because they get frustrated. Because I'm the kind of guy like I'm not super into video games. Like I play them, I enjoy them, but on this one, like if I'm running on a path of the horse, I'm zigzagging through it. I'm hitting trees. I'm running into other people and horses. If a guy
They're like,
talks to me,
stay
I'm shooting
straight.
him. Yeah, they're like, how hard is it to follow the path? I'm like, who cares? I'm trying to get there fast. Or my horse. My
I did the
brother's like,
same thing.
my brother was like, he never feeds his horse. He never feeds Arthur. He's like, what are you doing? And I told him, I was like, why do you want me to feed him? There's grass everywhere. I'll just leave him in the grass. Like, what are you talking about? And apparently that's not how it works. Look, man, I rode horses as a kid. That's exactly how it works. You leave them in grass. Like, I'd like to talk to Rockstar about that because I should not have to feed a carrot to him every 10 minutes.
Hey man, he needs his energy too. So yeah, that's funny. I don't remember feeding him that often, but yeah, it's I just like to have the options. Like in
Yeah.
that game, just the ability to do those kind of things is something that I can't, at least in games I've played, you don't see that too often. Like of course there's Fallout where you can do that, but they have that extra mile of like the animation when you go to do it, rather than just like, oh, clicked it and
Yeah.
it's in you automatically, like so. And Fallout's one of my favorites of all time as well. But yeah, they serious attention to detail with just pretty much everything in that game.
So I'm trying to think back to something. I think I heard about something about you a very long time ago. I want to verify it while you're here. Did you live in Japan at some point? Were you
China.
China? Okay, I was about to say, like, I heard something like that. What's the story behind that?
Oh boy. Well, we only have so much time, Lucas. So the long story short of me moving to Shanghai and then Bangbu for a little bit, much smaller city than Shanghai, of course. I just kind of, it was a mix of things in my personal life and the MMA space where I just, well, the personal stuff, which I won't get into, but then in the media space, like I got just so absolutely sick of like the clickbait kind of news and all that. It was just bothered me so much. And whether it was having to write it or see it, it just seemed very bad in both of those directions. In like, what was that, 20 and like late 2018, first half of 2019, most of 2019, I suppose. But it was just being too much for me. So I was like, you know what? the personal things taking over the consideration, and then me not doing super well in this space, at least financially. It's like, I'm going to start a new life. Let's do that. What's the easiest way to do, or what's the biggest and best way to do that? Of course, I could move within the States, but I really want to, saying start a new life is a big thing. So what's the biggest way to do that? Well, I'm going to move to Japan, which was my initial idea. That was what I wanted to do. And so the easiest way, in theory, what everybody says, doing the research, is if you want to move abroad and you don't really have a necessary job lined up, is, all right, get into English teaching. It's like, all right, well, I think I know enough about the English language, words and how they work and all that. But regardless, you still have to go and, get your 100-hour certificates and actually do some teaching training and all that. So that's what I ended up doing. But for Japan, and why I wasn't able to go live there instead, like I wanted to, was because they require you to get your bachelor's degree. And so I just was not willing to wait 4 years. So I was like, all right, I'm going to have to go somewhere else where we can do this now, because I cannot wait. I am very depressed. Let's get this rolling. So instead, China was an option. Went to Shanghai in the summer of 2019. And I get there and loved it. I thought China is a phenomenal country. Still love it. Would love to go back. Was planning to go back before the pandemic ruined it. But what ended up happening was I realized that I don't want to be an English teacher. Funny. It's funny how that works.
Yeah.
So I loved everything about that experience except for what I was there to do. So I was like, well, fuck, let's I guess I'll come back and try it out. I made a kind of pact to myself, or told myself a promise. I was like, all right, well, we were seeing what was wrong in this space for me mentally and all that kind of thing. So let's just do exactly what I want to do, which I love to, tell fighter stories, do interviews, show them the respect they deserve, do right by them rather than clickbait nonsense, TMZ type of garbage, which was just inflating all over the place near me. So I came back and I really got into that more so than I was before. And it worked out for a bit and then kind of led us to here, which is fantastic. But it's a good thing, Lucas. I'll tell you, it's a good thing I left when I did, and that it didn't work out as much as I did like the country. But if I would have stayed for about any longer than I did, I would have got stuck there, because this was right before COVID.
Right.
Literally right before.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I told Nolan and Jose, shout out to them, this story when we were in Phoenix for Bellator. We're like, oh man, what a coincidence. Weird timing that you left right before. It's like, I didn't do it. I promise I didn't do it. But yeah, no, if I would have got stuck there if I stayed any longer. And I know that there were some other, foreign teachers who did end up getting stuck there, because of course they allowed you like holiday leave for Christmas. You go back to see your family and all that kind of thing. But couldn't do that during that time. So people got stuck there for way longer than they planned to. And the school I was at ended up not paying them for because of that or whatever. It's like, oh, that would have been a disaster. And of course I could have still done MMA stuff from there, get your VPNs and all that, but it would have still been a nightmare. So I got very lucky, but yeah, it's an interesting how it all played out in that regard. And now I have a tattoo on my line up here to remember it, and I do plan on going back someday. Don't know about living there unless I can do what I want, but I would. It's just it wasn't what I wanted to do in the end.
So what changes did you make in the MMA space? Because we see you now, you've got that beautiful blue check mark on Twitter. You're like at these events and stuff. Like people are looking at you like, you're in a great position. When you got back, what was sort of the first things you did? Like, did you make a big change, a gradual one? Like, what was kind of the change you did to get the wheels in motion?
That's a good question. Like I said, it was just kind of focusing a lot more on providing that unique content and really sticking to doing things that other people weren't, which is something I always tried to do even before then. But just being with, websites like BJPenn.com, which I am back with them again, but they don't really look for that kind of stuff. The big, I write long stories, essentially they're longer, and I know it's kind of a dying art a little bit, but I just enjoy doing it so much. And I think the fighters love it more than anything, which is probably the most satisfying thing to me. So just really focusing on that rather than yeah, you kind of have to do the little newsy bits every here and then because, quick click, get the money, all that kind of thing. Got to do it a little bit, but I don't know if I did it at all actually right when I came back. It was just strictly pumping out, the thought out, more powerful or thought provoking stories about fighters, and it ended up leading to, all right, well, I got to adapt to video stuff because when I was doing my interviews, it was like, I think we all started out for the most part doing like the phone recorded to the microphone, which, oh man, I hate that I did that looking back on it. Like it was awful. But adapting to the times of COVID and then doing like StreamYard or Zoom interviews, whatever it may be, and starting up some more podcasting type things, just kind of really trying to really hit home in parts in terms of doing things that other people are doing. And eventually it turned into like, all right, well, let's swallow the pride a little bit. I've made this work for long enough to where, okay, I'm going to swallow the pride and I'll do not clickbait shit necessarily, but I know that I have to do maybe some more, daily news pieces or whatever. Just really think of ways to avoid, or how you can make it not seem like bullshit or avoid that. So thankfully, everybody I've worked with has been understanding of, what I want to do and liked what I've done, that it's led to where I'm, in the best spot of my career right now, and getting to travel and all this crazy stuff right now. So it's kind of weird when you're making me reflect on it, Lucas. It's a crazy thing considering where there was that point where I completely quit. Leading up to going to China, I got off of social media for like 3 months in preparation for it. I was like, all right, I'm still going to watch the fights because I love MMA still, but I just don't want to deal with any of this nonsense, the toxicity and everything involved, which was very nice. That was a very good cleanse. But it's just, it's such a unique thing being in the media space, no matter what sport it is. But thankfully, there are many, many ways to make it work. And I believe I'm living proof of that with that point to now, and then even before then, because I got into this through the SureDog forums, Lucas. I didn't go to college or anything ridiculous like that. Props to anybody who has, but school was never something I was too excited about. So I did not want to do it after 12 years of school growing up, right? So thankfully, have been able to make this work pretty good.
You mentioned the clickbait stuff, and I know well, now being the only MMA guy at my website, a big conversation is like, you get monthly calls of let's talk about the traffic. And it's like as soon as you get honest in the titles, nobody gives a shit. You know what I mean? They
Yeah.
see it and they're like, I got everything I need. And now I just hate having to do, this super vague stuff, or, this fighter wants this guy next, and you got to put like a shadow in the thumbnail with a question mark. Like, I hate it so much. But it's like anytime you do vague stuff, Jake Paul stuff, or shit nobody wants to write about, that's when it does well. And then one of the guys was like, well, for the traffic, maybe you should start incorporating WWE. And I was like, but I hate wrestling. It's like, I hate it. That's my thing. Like, I tell people, I was on Fightful's watch along saying I don't like wrestling. They're like, yeah, but the numbers. So now every time I write it, I'm crying. My fingers are bleeding. I don't even know what I'm writing. I was like, I don't
Yeah.
understand any of this stuff. Like, I wrote something about The Rock. I was like, I know who that is. He chases
Yeah.
bad guys in fast cars. Like, I get that. I'm good there. But anything else, it's like I'm crying as I'm doing it. And then, you look at yourself and you're like, who are you? Look at you.
Yeah.
Look at what you're doing. Damn it. You're not a wrestling guy.
I mean, I grew up a total wrestling guy, big hardcore. Like I was very religious about catching the shows every single, day that they were on. But then once I saw real fighting, it's like, oh, this is way better. And
Yeah.
then, but then recently, I've gotten more intrigued by kind of the back end side of it, like the business that goes into it. So I'm a kind of a wrestling guy a little bit again, but I can't sit through like a full show or watch a full match because like it's just too slow paced for me. And not that I can't do that, but I prefer not to. If I can catch a highlight of the whole show, that's generally what I'll do. But yeah, no, about the not clickbait necessarily. I know I've said that a lot. Like
Was it editorialized title? People like
yeah.
these fancy names that are harmless, but really like we know what you're saying.
Right. What I was going to mention about that is I feel it's a little bit similar to how you conduct an interview or who you're talking to, how you're asking questions. There's a way that anything can be asked. Like we've seen recently this year specifically, Lucas, a lot of very bad questions get asked to, especially on these like Zoom media day things. Like they just attract some
Yeah,
very, very poor questions, but maybe not so much the questions, but their presentation is abysmal. It's
yeah.
dreadful. And they that's a repetition thing, right? You got to learn and, maybe take your lumps a little bit. But I believe that there is truly a way to ask anything without being a total dickhead or offensive. Look at Pink Suit Guy again. He was, great to Colby this week. um, and then I think the same can go or be said for titles, and headlines and however you want to make a story. There's a way to present it without being too boring, like kind of you're saying, not giving away as much, but not making it clickbait. There's a way to do everything. And of course, more effort goes into it if you got to try and make it that way rather than just being like, spewed it out there, however. But it's an art in a little bit of a way, right? So just takes a little bit more thought. And it helps to know, though, rather than, just talking about something like The Rock and whatever he's doing, Lucas.
It was Vin Diesel. My title
Oh,
was, we talk about how horrible the titles are. It was like Vin Diesel's desperate plea to The Rock. I mean, it was just everything inside of me was burning, and I like Fast
that's
and
like something
Furious.
you'd see on a magazine cover.
I know, I hated it. I was like, all we need is a picture of a Vin Diesel with a big gut, looking sad, like he's only got 3 more days to live. His desperate plea to The Rock. Like everything inside me was like, who is this guy? Who are you, douchebag? But you gotta do what you gotta do, man. This is a full-time dream. But you mentioned an interesting point about the Zoom media stuff, because everybody mentioned that thing when Kayla Harrison came after that reporter for being generous, and then I added to it and basically told everybody what they already knew, like the question was bad, blah blah blah. And James Lynch brought up an interesting point of how about we help this guy, we give advice. That's fair, but here's my thing too, is that when you hear the way he set it up and the fact that he's done multiple versions of stuff like that, as it turns out, is with Kayla too, I'm pretty sure, you feel like this isn't a serious person. Like this guy doesn't give a shit what happens. You know what I mean? Like there's some guys you feel like they're like, I've got 5 seconds to become the schmo and I'm going to capitalize on it.
Yeah, and that makes me want to mention Pink Suit Guy again, which I did meet him this past weekend. He was very nice to me, but I mean, I'm gonna be honest, and I'm sure he gets it all the time as well. But I'm not a fan of how he conducted himself with Colby. I thought that was definitely way over the line and absolute garbage nonsense. But yeah, like doing something like that, just the way it's specifically talking about him in this case, the way that he built up what seemed like a compliment to Colby. And you saw Colby was enjoying it,
Yeah.
right? He's like, all right, I see where this is going. And then you see the flip turn once he starts to break it down. And you're like, okay, that's a dick move, man. That's just
Yeah.
completely unnecessary. And yeah, we're talking about it now. So I guess it worked in that way and people remember that. But that is, I was talking to somebody else about it too. But like I don't even know if that's a good version of self-promotion for him.
Yeah.
Like it's yeah, getting us talking about it, but not in a good way. And it's not promoting where he's working. It's just
Or his
looking like
name.
an asshole. His name, yeah,
Yeah, he's a
exactly.
pink suit guy. Like, who is that?
People don't know that his actual name is Josh. I don't know his last name, so I won't put that out there. But
There you
he's
go.
he's a media guy, ESPN Florida or something like that. So I'll let y'all know. Whatever, I don't care. But yeah, it's funny though, because if you look back at when he first got noticed was to Connor, right? And I actually thought that was pretty hilarious. Like I don't know if it was still okay by whatever standards you want to have or whatever, but just the way that he presented that one about saying like, you haven't won a fight since Obama was president. Like, what's going to be different here? Yeah, that's still a dickhead thing to say, but that was kind of funny to me. A lot
Yeah.
more innocent than this Colby incident, which was like they were screaming at each other. It was insane to me, Lucas.
Colby has found a way to create a character because it's clear what he's doing. He's a wrestling guy. I mean, now that unfortunately I have to write about it, I get it. He's a wrestling character, and this Trump guy, Colby Covington, whatever, and he's managed to make a character that's so like you have such a strong opinion about him that even the media can't help but feel strongly about it. Where guys are trying to get him to break kayfabe, trying to trap him with something. Like it doesn't matter. Like you hear. How many compilations did we see of him stumbling over his own words? Doesn't matter as long as he stays in character. But it's interesting to me how it's so strong that you see even guys that try to be professional, even they can't help but have a strong opinion on Colby and who he is as a person or his character and all that stuff.
Yeah, no, Colby has done, a phenomenal job of just kind of pulling the wool over people's eyes for the most part. And I know that it's a lot more obvious now that he is a total gimmick, and he's even admitted this, right? But
Yeah.
still, there are so many people who get rattled by what he says. It's like that's the thing with me is I never got annoyed by him or
Yeah.
upset or anything like that, just because it's like it was so obvious to me. Like I said, a guy who grew up just totally enticed with wrestling and all that. You can really see it if you're used to that kind of thing. And then even a couple years ago, he did something with a wrestling organization, TNA or what was it, Impact for those wrestling fans who might be watching right now. So he like has given these hints out slowly more and more until totally admitting it now. But it's just it's incredible his willingness to still keep it going. Because I honestly thought after he lost to Usman, like, how do you keep that going?
Yeah.
But then he did. Props to him. And then even just this last Saturday, he breaks character, completely goes to normal Colby, talking to Joe Rogan on the mic. It's like, oh, that's nice to see. They have a nice little moment, hug it out. Then he comes backstage and
Yeah.
talks to us, and he's completely back to how he always is. Like, this guy's insane in
I
a
mean,
great promoter way.
Exactly. I mean, I'm gonna say this, like, I don't feel that strongly about it because it's he's doing this thing, and you know what? And it makes it kind of more fun. That he added some spice to that Kamaru Usman fight. Even the political stuff. It's like I could definitely see less of that in this sport, but still, he made it. I don't want to say fun, but there was like a storyline, fake or not. Like there was something there, like Kamaru Usman standing up for all the immigrants, all the minorities and stuff to take out this Trump guy. Like it or not, he added some extra spice that wouldn't have been there if neither one of them had really said anything or if they were buddy buddy the whole time.
Yeah, and the thing that stood out most to me this fight week was like nothing he said and all this hype and talk really changed my mind at all. I just found it very entertaining because I think that like his over the topness is pretty funny to me. Like
Yeah.
because it's just some of the stuff he says is like either super corny or just like wow he said that
Yeah.
okay he went there. But what I found fascinating was how well he kind of I don't know if you could say revived, but created this narrative about the fake nut shots and the fake eye pokes from Usman in the first fight. Like everybody completely. I mean, I don't know if it's justified to say that. When you look back on it, of course they looked a little bit weird and all, but that narrative of that stuff happening after the first fight went away very quickly because Colby kept it up after the first fight, but then he brought it back full force this time around, and people were talking about it again. It's like he's good at what he does, man. Whether it's in the cage or, obviously in terms of building stories in certain ways.
But I feel like he has to do that because he had some big obstacles. Losing to Usman and getting his jaw broken, which I think they confirmed was like a real thing, I guess, from the medical report, that could have been it. Trump no longer president, that could have been
Yeah.
it. Like
Yeah.
those were huge obstacles. And he said, I don't care. I'm going to keep Tito Ortizing it, making gibberish. And I feel like I hate to use the word smart, but like it's a smart way of doing it. Because if he had been like, yeah, Usman beat me, unfortunately, it wasn't my night. Hell no, that's not the Colby Covington we came for. Colby Covington is going to tell us about some nut shot that we're not sure we saw out there, or some eye poke that was really a jab. Like it doesn't matter. Like for me, I like that he's willing to stick to his guns, even if maybe he looks like a dumbass or he's got pink suit guy screaming at him. Like
Yeah.
he's accepted that. You know what? For this to work, I have to go all in, and I feel like it is working. He's headlining pay per views, getting immediate rematches, stuff like that. Like people are paying attention, like it or not.
Oh no, you're totally right. And it's funny because like just looking at the numbers like that he does for any site, really. I mean, people as much as you hate and or love a guy like that, the strength of those sides because of his character it's good for everybody in a
Yeah,
way,
yeah.
right? Like, sure, it can annoy the shit out of you regardless. What, like I said, in that hatred, aspect, or if people love it because it's so silly and ridiculous. Like, I wouldn't say I love it. I'm pretty in between because I understand what's going on,
Yeah,
but
exactly. Yeah.
um, it doesn't hurt the sport. The guy makes a lot of noise, which is good for everybody.
Speaking of guys making a lot of noise with sport and stuff like that, something I've had to write a lot about, which also makes me cry, probably just as much as wrestling, is Jake Paul. I don't understand how this guy has become a combat sport. I thought when I left high
He's not
school and
even in
stopped.
MMA.
Yeah, I thought when I stopped with Vine, that was the end of Jake Paul. I was never gonna hear about that guy again. And then he's following me here into MMA too, and he doesn't even fight MMA. Like I don't understand how he's managed to, be so far into it. And now people are talking about him as a legit fighter.
Yeah, it's absolutely wild, and I'm glad that you mentioned Vine, Lucas, because this has been one of the experiences I think in the combat sports world with him getting involved in all that. That's made me continue to feel young. Is that people didn't realize he was a Vine guy, and
Yes.
the select few of us who were teenagers during that time, we know that that's where they came from. So that's what I like to remember. That like, okay, I guess I am younger than a lot of people still, but yeah, it's mind-blowing to me, how he's really not taken over, but gotten himself as a prominent figure to consistently speak about in a sport that he's not competing in. That's the thing that
Yes.
drives me the craziest. Like I just said right there, he's not even in MMA.
Yes.
Yet every MMA outlet and site continues to talk about him. And I'm curious if this is going to continue as he's fighting an actual boxer this time. He's not fighting an MMA guy this time around. So
It
why
it
cover
it
him?
is. It is. It because you saw how many things have you seen, like Tyson Fury comments on, Tommy Fury versus Jake Paul? Like, what was that have to do with MMA? Like, I get it's combat sports, but if your website's name has MMA, not
Yeah,
firing
yeah.
shots, but it's just seemed a little bit weird to me to find a way to include that in there, despite the fact that it's not MMA. Like Tyron Woodley, fine, he's an MMA guy.
Yeah.
We'll take him. We're not happy with the loss, so but we'll still claim him. But man, damn it, like I didn't even know who Tommy Fury was. You know what I mean? Like it just seems weird to me we're still talking about him in the MMA space.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's because he continually, he's smart enough to have these back and forths with MMA guys still, whether it's with Dana. And I mean, that's pretty much been it lately, right? Since this fight got announced, he hasn't been talking too much about other guys. I mean, Connor's constantly being there, but Connor, is in his own stratosphere. So I don't know if you can count that necessarily, but um, it's a very interesting thing. And we know why sites and everybody are continuing to cover it because people continue to look.
Yes.
That's the thing. That's the thing. But it's like my purest heart and all that. This is the kind of shit that I escaped when I went to China, which is a funny thing to say, escaping to China. But again, great country. Yeah, it's mind blowing to me, and thankfully I've been able to just zen out and get over it at this stage. But um another thing, Lucas, going back to what we were talking about, the schmo, is like longevity. How long is this fad phase going to last with not only him but Logan, who is apparently fighting Mike Tyson, apparently?
Oh,
Like
is
I
that
don't
is
know.
that a real thing?
I don't know,
Oh
maybe
man.
not. Yeah, because I don't pay attention to it, right? I don't
Yeah.
I don't care about boxing by itself, so I really don't care about this shit. So
Oh yeah. Well,
it's
that's fair. But it's like the fights or whatever you want to call it, they're not even good. Like,
no,
I've
no.
streamed some of them with a bunch of pixels on my phone by clicking on a link, and you're like, what why are people watching this garbage? Like if the fights were entertaining,
Yeah.
fine. But it's not. They're not even good. They're all decisions. There's very little punches. Guys get tired. I mean, I don't understand what people are finding. Like for me, the first two fights maybe, but you've seen enough now. And especially Logan Paul Mayweather. If you watch that garbage, you're kind of like, all right, like I'm good. Like we're not going to get anything entertaining. Like we just saw Gaethje versus Michael Chandler. Like I don't care if they have, Justin Gaethje. I said it on Twitter. He could fight a chair. I don't care. There doesn't have to be a storyline because
It'll
it's going to be
still win fight of the
entertaining.
night.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't. He'll find a way to get injured in that fight and get wobbled by the chair. Like it doesn't matter. Like that one's going to be entertainment. But Jake Paul, like I guess the entertainment is the build up to the fight instead of the fight, and that to me feels a little backwards.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. Like since I don't care about this garbage at all, I was with my friends on the night of the Woodley fight, so they wanted to see it, which is like, okay, so it is working for casuals because my
Yeah.
friends are not, you know, they're pretty between hardcore and casual, but they were interested enough where they wanted to see that. I was like, okay, you guys are gonna make me watch it, fine. And yeah, man, like that's the thing is I see much more of the build up than the fights because I don't give a shit whatsoever about how the fight. Well, I want them to lose, but I don't care
Yeah.
about watching them or whatever. But the build up, I don't even know if it's that entertaining in my opinion, but it's more entertaining than the fights. At least the Woodley one, which I saw, it's like if these guys were going out there and having bangers and coming out on top, then we're talking a little bit. There's something
Yeah.
to that, but like it must purely be people just wanting to see them lose and get knocked out at some point, because that's what they're skating by on so far. Is that hasn't happened, and it ties back to the longevity. Once that does happen, is it instantly over, or can they squeeze something out of like Colby's been being able to do? I think it's different cases there, but I think it's that's the most fascinating thing to me is like, when is this going to stop?
Speaking of people like that, I had to write about Dylan Dennis today.
Oh
Fuck
God.
is going on with this guy? I mean, and I took Shaq's interview where apparently he was gonna fight Ally Quinta outside of a nightclub, get slapped by Ali. Like, I feel like he's got more crap outside of the cage than he does in his 2 fights in
Oh,
the cage. Like,
100%.
but I still don't understand how he's relevant. Like, I mean, he truly is the case of a I train with Conor McGregor. Pay attention to me. I have no idea how on earth that worked.
Yeah, I mean, that's the hilarious thing is like he's literally not relevant in MMA
No,
right now. But because of how irrelevant he is, that's keeping him relevant. That's literally like the
that's
case of
crazy.
this.
That's so crazy.
Because the guy's practically a gimmick and a joke himself, right? I think he's essentially admitted this, at least when talking to Ariel. Like you see, he's kind of a wholesome guy, very rarely when he wants to be, but there's not a single person on this planet aside from maybe his mother and father who believe some of the shit he says. Like, it's all complete nonsense character. Like, I bet he doesn't even believe the shit he says. Like, that's how crazy he's. The most over the top, like in terms of not like Colby ridiculous funny it's not funny clever shit at all
No,
that he says.
no.
It's just like, yeah, I'd beat Michael Bisping easily, like that kind of stuff. Not even funny, man. Like, at least be funny with it. But I think his persistence to maintain that and then not actually be a fighter is why he still gets talked about. I've noticed it has gone down, I think, but like, I don't know why people give him attention anymore. Like, does it do good numbers for you, Lucas? I don't think I've ever written anything about Dennis because I dislike him that much.
Consider yourself lucky. But listen, the reason I took the Ally Quinta one is because Shaq's my boy. So I'm like,
Yes.
I'm gonna try to get you some extra traffic if I can and stuff. And also Ally Quinta, I love just seeing him he start go on his Bill Burr like rants about stuff. Like the video of him where Aljo was talking to another reporter or something, and he's
That
like,
was hilarious.
he was like, please, it's my time. Like, I love stuff like that. See, stuff like that I enjoy, but making shit up and about fighting Michael Bisping, like, but Ally Quinta, I love his character. Like, I just think it's so funny, the angry New York guy from, whose grandparents don't
The
speak any
realtor.
English. Yeah, exactly. Yes, the realtor, all that stuff. I love it.
Yeah, Al is definitely see, and that ties in again to like going to Jake Paul not being in MMA. At least in this case, like, I'm not really counting Dennis as in MMA at this point, but Iaquinta is at least. And if he was
Yes.
involved, then it's reasonable, I think, in that case. If I would write about I might, who knows, maybe I will today. We'll see.
Oh,
But
no.
like if Iaquinta was involved, yeah, the guy is an actual MMA fighter, and something happened with him in there, then okay, yeah, sure, put it out there. I'm okay with that in a way. Still annoying that the other
Yes.
guy's there, but it's weird. It's like guilt by association, right?
All right, listen, man, before we wrap things up, because we got real negative, Dylan Daniels, Jake Paul, and all that stuff. That's my fault. I don't know how I got us down here, but to end it on a more positive note, what's your long-term goal in this industry? Like, are you one of those guys you want the one website, senior editor, whatever? Do you want to take Brendan Schaub's role at Showtime, Joe, the Drake Riggs Experience podcast?
Yeah.
What's kind of the long-term goal for you in this industry?
It's funny. I've been talking about this a lot more frequently with some people being on the road. Actually, is like the I think the common goal in everybody's minds, or at least that natural desire in MMA media, is to find that one full-time home, right? Like, that seems like that's just ingrained, I think, in everyone's thoughts who get right in. At least from my experience and who I've talked to, I haven't really, you know, talked to any guys who on the come up were like, no, that wouldn't be cool, like that kind of thing. But so that's always in the back of my head, and I would, of course, there's some of the big names I would love to be, associated with in that capacity. But then I think about like what I'm actually doing right now and how I'm making it work full time and getting paid, pretty well enough to do that, all these things and things I actually like to do, not, just strictly news or whatever it is, like when I was very upset. But I think about that, and then, all right, if I went to one of these full-time spots, would I still be able to do that? And would I end up being as happy? It's like, it's kind of a confliction I'm dealing with right now. So I'm just kind of going with the flow. but it always seems most nice. So I think the goal is to maybe at least see what that's like, because this option I'm doing right now is always going to be there, right? The ability to go to multiple websites and do whatever you want, make it work if you're good enough. Not to say that I am, because I really don't think I am, and obviously
And
no
yet,
one
I mean,
else
here you
does.
are. Here you are. So I mean, clearly you're doing something right. You know, you got to give yourself credit when it's due.
Yeah, well, appreciate it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I think that, I guess, would be the goal right now, is to at least see what that's like. But I'm really just going with the flow and seeing, where things take me. I love SCMP, if I could expand the role with them. Maybe get back to international stuff as soon as possible. That would be amazing. But yeah, I don't know. I hope that answers the question. It's not too solid right now, but that's where my mind is at.
There we go. We can't argue with that, man. Listen, to end things, I mean, you've got social media, you've got like a million websites. So we could spend another 10 minutes on those. But anything you want to plug, man, social media, work, whatever it is, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I'll just keep it to the socials. So at Drake Riggs _ on Twitter and Instagram, mostly a Twitter guy. Instagram a little bit more silly, but still promoting stuff there. Recent things that I've released. Well, episode 10 of Broaden Horizon is out now. That is my podcast with Shingo, where we talk to plenty of Japanese and Ryzen fighters in English, but we also have Japanese audio versions as well as English on Spotify, all that. Episode 10 is our 1-year anniversary show, so you can check that out now. Great 5-guest lineup. Megumi Fuji, the GOAT herself, Nobuyuki Sakibara, the boss man, Siri Oshima, Juntaro Ushiku, who just became featherweight champion, Lenny Hart, the iconic voice of Pride and Ryzen as well. She's on that episode. Check that out, MyMMANews.com, my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Drake Riggs. And then Spotify, like I said. And yeah, just continually working on what is going to be essentially a big novel book of the women's history in mixed martial arts. So that going to come out sometime next year. I'm kind of taking it slow with that because you need to, but that's the biggest project I've ever, worked on and done. So that is in the works right now, and talking to many, many, many names for that. So I'll leave it there, Lucas. I could go on and on, but I appreciate it.
All right, man. Well, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And for the people that made it to the end, I feel like they deserve a special shout out, because people don't always make it to the end. Holy shit, you made it to the end. Congratulations and thank you. All right, so we'll see you guys next week. Drake, thank you so much for coming on.